Hello to everybody who's here and everybody who's going to be catching up later. My name is William Wyatt. This is the 5th meeting of the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State for spring 2022. And I got that introduction just right, didn't I? We are today going through the rise and fall of the American circus. It's mostly a historical account, but there will be, because if for no other reason than because I'm here, there will be some philosophical pontificating embedded in there somewhere. So moving into the agenda. We're going to go do some announcements. We're going to do some ice breaking. I think everybody who's in the room at the moment, we know each other, but we may go through that anyway. We're going to go through an abridged version of the timeline for the American circus. And then we're going to discuss how it went down. I guess we call it pros and cons. They're not really sorted that way, but we'll get there. And then some discussion, which may be the majority of our time here. Hopefully so. We'll have things to talk about. On to announcements. So first and foremost, vote in the ASI election. I did it earlier today. It didn't take very long. We have our club endorsements is on the record for ASI already. And it was only the one candidate we endorsed, but other than that, it's a fairly straightforward process.
Robert Gonzalez for vice president of, what was it, student affairs?
Academic affairs. Robert Gonzalez for academic affairs. And yeah, we made that, we did that paperwork. Yeah, so there's that. I hope people will go in and do the thing and vote. It closes at 7:30, so if you're watching this immediately, I don't know. There's basically no way to if you're catching this like on Monday. But anyway, so yeah, if you vote for the Disabled Non-Disabled Alliance in that club, in that election, we will get some money, which is nice. We'll figure out how to put it in a bank account at that time.
I don't know if we'll get the money because we haven't set up the bank account, but
we're
on the list, so I'm assuming there's a way.
I was pleasantly surprised to find us on that list, incidentally. Anyway, our next meeting is April 15th, which I believe is, it's Friday, and it is a movie night. We are looking for suggestions. Last time, I think it was the last time we had a movie night, or maybe the time before that, we watched a fun anime movie that made me sad because it was about romance. The next official meeting, the next big one, is April 22nd, also a Friday, on accessible gardening, which is going to be an interesting time. I know nothing about that, so that'll be fun. So we hope you'll be there. That's to be clear again. The announcements to those effects will be in the Discord. So if you follow that, good on you. On to, I suppose, the icebreaker, whereupon I will do my own and then turn it over.
What about the officer and committee signups? Did we make any headway on that, or I noticed you skipped that announcement, and I wasn't sure if that was on purpose.
Oh, I did skip that. That's just my eyes. As far as I know, we haven't. I haven't done anything on that, but I should. It's good to commit to the recording that we are looking for officers to step into the role next semester, where I will still be around. I will still be part of the club, and I will hopefully be involved in it. But I may not be eligible for being an officer that entire year because I'll hopefully be graduating. Something similar is true for the other officers here as well. So yeah, we're looking for people to step into the role. And we do want to, in addition to that, set up committees to initiate other ways of getting involved in the club and doing the work of student advocacy and club administration, etc. This is looking for people to fill these positions as part of how the club grows. So hopefully people will sign up, reach out to us any way in which you are comfortable, and we will start to put you through that process. Otherwise, stick around, wait for like an announcement or something to the effect of signing up or nominating each other or oneself for various officer and committee positions. If you're curious as to which committees, I would encourage you to go to the Hornet Hub and download our constitution. The committees are outlined in there, although as with any organization, it's a bit what you make of it. So yeah. Do we have anything to add before we go on to icebreakers?
I think you got it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Icebreakers, introductions, etc. I guess I'll go first and then shut up. My name is William Wyatt. I use the He series. My major is philosophy with a concentration in ethics, politics, and law because I'd like to be pretentious. And I'm kind of a senior at this point. I should have like this semester and one more to go after that. So there you take that for what you will. I've been in college forever. And okay, when I put the question on to the committee for consideration, it was what is your favorite video game, but now it says what is your favorite game. So I'm going to say Scrabble. I think Scrabble would be fun to play. I could dominate and pontificate. Anyway,
I suck at Scrabble. I suck at Scrabble so bad. My name's Rian Dinsans. I use pronouns they, them, theirs, themself. My major is child development. I should be on my 4th year, but I'm not. So we can just ignore that. And my favorite game at this moment is probably the new Pokemon game that came out this year, Pokemon Legends Arceus. It has consumed my life, so yeah.
Yeah, it's so addicting. Come on, it's like so relaxing because you just catch Pokemon and that's it. It's relaxing. And I guess I can go next. I'm Brian Tao. I pronounce a he, him, his. My major is environmental studies, and I hope to become a city planner. I'm in my 4th year, but next semester will be my last, and it'll be my easiest because I only have to take 2 classes. And my favorite video game is, I guess, Red Dead Redemption, just because how realistic it is. Like, I guess like you could feed yourself, you can feed horses, you can feed dogs. But I guess the main like kind of thing is just to do your missions. But like if you don't focus on your missions, it's still a great game.
yeah, I love a good realistic homing dynamite. My favorite thing. Or is it a homing tomahawk? I think I remember it being a homing tomahawk. Really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and
we have one other
then we
person in the
have
room
Jacqueline.
who is muted at the moment, so I don't know if you're want to or able or comfortable doing the introductions. That's fine. Go ahead.
You can also put it in the chat if you can't speak right now.
Is it Arceus or Arceus?
I think it's
Arceus.
Arceus. I thought it
I
was
mean,
Arceus for like my entire childhood, but only recently did I find out it was Arceus.
I mean, it's
Jacqueline says I like TFT.
oh, TFT. Nice.
I don't know what that stands for.
Totally fungible tokens.
Oh, we have William here. He's connecting audio. Hi, William. We're just doing some icebreakers right now. Do you just want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, give me a second. We make a us.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacqueline, do you want to introduce yourself in the chat?
Maybe it's Team Fortress.
Is it Team Fortress 2?
I have no idea.
I mean, it makes sense because two T Team Fortress 2.
I kind of like the ambiguity
Mm-hmm.
of the statement.
What was the question?
Oh, hi,
Oh.
Jackie.
Hi.
I heard Jacqueline group chat and then like
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what does TFT stand for?
team fight tactic. It's like a subdivision of League of Legends.
Ooh, nice.
One of my friends is like a big League of Legends fan, so this was their way for like us to bond. It's like a strategy game, in my opinion, because you get it's like a lot of chance, and like it's also strategy based because like you have to build your team. So in the beginning, there's a little circle, and you have to like quickly grab your avatar before other people do, and then like once you grab your avatar, you have like 3 rounds before you have to fight other people because it's a online game, and like then you have to like grab like 3 of the same avatar to make the avatar a true star, and then grab like you have to have 3 true star avatars to make a
Jackie,
3
that's all right. We should go. We should. The show must go on, I say.
Yeah, sure, let's go on. Yeah,
Also, we have a new
also
sponsor,
William,
hashtag not spawn.
not sponsor. I think our sponsor is Where's the Ramp? Where's the
Jackie, you can
Ramp?
tell me more about the game later.
Yeah, and also like Will, I guess you could do your introduction in the chat. I think it's time to move on to the good stuff.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's good, but like
I know it's not good.
the main point. So I very sloppily cobbled together this very abridged version of the timeline of the American circus. The first circus was established in America by a man whose last name is Ricketts, and I can't remember the rest of his name, and I didn't write it down. My apologies. I'm sure you can look it up easily with that information, though. In 1793, he actually came from Britain because the circus originated in Europe and then it was brought over. In 1825, the wooden circus buildings in America were replaced by the much more portable tents. This was crucial because at the time there was a lot of expansion happening, and so circuses had to be much more light footed and ready to go at a moment's notice. In 1835, the Zoological Institute forms, which solidified the American circus model, that being having sideshows and menageries of animals and different acts involving animals, in addition to acrobatics and equestrian trick riders. In 1860, that's when the circus that you think of today when thinking about the circus first started taking on a more solidified shape through the P.T. Barnum Museum Menagerie and Circus. It made the human sideshow integral to the American circus model because it started incorporating more acts and performances that were more about exhibitions of humans and animals, but definitely mostly humans, in addition to the actual agility type performances or strength performances. In 1907, the Ringling Brothers, which was another prominent circus company, and the Barnum and Bailey Circus Company merged together. This was shortly after Bailey passed away, and I think Barnum was already dead by then. I don't know. Um, and this is kind of a prelude to the kind of end of an era there, as in the 1940s, after the Second World War, freak shows started to dwindle. Freak shows being the ones where disabled people were exhibited as entertainment and objectified. And in some states, those specific freak shows actually became illegal. And the timeline ends there because the circus technically still exists today, but is in a very different form and shape. So these aren't actually sorted into pros and cons, even though it's called the pros and cons slide. And that's specifically because the situation is a lot more complicated than it first appears. At first glance, you think that it's a bad thing to have disabled people in the circus in the way that they were in because they were objectified. Their act was just kind of existing and then people being shocked or disgusted by it in exchange for money, right? That's objectively a bad thing. But then you start to realize that at the same time this was happening, we also had the eugenics movement and the ugly laws, which tied in together, which meant that many disabled people didn't actually have much control or community outside of the circus. Granted, they didn't have much control or community inside of the circus either, but it was still more than what they would have had outside of the circus, because outside of the circus, you would be hidden away, seen as a burden. You wouldn't be allowed to just exist publicly in peace. So joining a circus or being sold into the circus was a way to kind of jump out of the fire and into the frying pan, so to speak. Um, but again, you aren't seen as a fellow human in your act. The objectification includes making up lies about yourself and your origin in order to sell the mystery. There were countless exhibitions that showcased just normal people that happened to be not white and also disabled as missing links or a new subset of humans that was discovered, or just a lot of really incredibly offensive things that was also straight up lies. There was a blind and deaf black woman that was formerly a slave that Barnum bought, and he marketed her as a 106-year-old woman, but at most she was only ever 80 years old. And they were the one of the most popular acts, General Tom Thumb, the little person. He entered into Barnum's Circus at a very young age, around 5 years old, and was marketed as like 11 years old. And he had him drinking for the audience's entertainment and smoking for the audience's entertainment at like 7 years old. No, stop. Very bad. And being, again, I can't emphasize enough the objectification aspect of this because there's so many layers to it. And it was like the main thing. You know, even if you were paid a lot of money for your exhibition, you were still objectified. It's still a bad thing to happen to you. In addition to that, you know, your act could do well, and when you do well, you rake in a large amount of money. But with that came shabby living conditions because you're constantly traveling and you don't have access to many of the amenities that we now have today. And, you know, they don't want to spend money on living conditions and amenities when they could just give you the money instead of like paying for your living conditions. In addition to that, days are often long and hard, and your act or exhibition would be pretty much constant throughout the day with only a few breaks. And there was one argument I saw that these exhibitions exposed the general public to people like you existing because circuses were incredibly popular and they were the top form of entertainment for Americans at the time. But at the same time, any sort of normalization that might occur due to that exposure was instantly undermined by the narrative that you were presented in order to sell those tickets to make that money. So it's kind of self-sabotaging there. And again, the audience doesn't see you as a legitimate performer or a human being. You're not a talented person to them. You're an object, something to marvel at, something to think, wow, am I lucky I'm not like that? You know, there's a lot of layers to this, and it's hard for me to sort them distinctly into pros and cons because there's no one way to look at it. but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can brush all the bad things aside and say, "Oh, it was absolutely a good thing," or "Oh, it was absolutely a bad thing," because it was definitely a bad thing, but for a lot of people, it could have been a very positive force for them. It, Barnum's most successful performers lived very richly and retired very richly and had a lot of success outside of the circus because of their fame. Um, but at the same time, not everybody was lucky as those performers, and they died at the bottle at they died at the bottom of an empty bottle, you know. Um, and I highly encourage you to kind of dig into this yourself, because this is stuff that I tried to put together on my own, and I'm not incredibly good at conveying the things I research, and I'm also not very good at researching itself. So I highly recommend you read books such as A Disability History of the United States by Kim E. Nielsen, or look up freak shows on Wikipedia. Just do your own reading into this, because this is just barely scratching the surface of it, and I can't dig in more without taking up too much of our time here and making things unnecessarily complicated. So I have encouraged you to look into this yourself later after the meeting.
I have not seen it, but can we briefly talk about that one movie they did with the circus that starred Iron Man as P.T. Barnum? I forget. He's not.
Oh, The Greatest Showman.
Sure. Yes.
Iron Man.
I think it's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah,
For
yeah.
some
It
reason,
stars
that
Hugh
actor's name is
Jackman.
Totally. Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman. He plays the
Oh,
protagonist.
I don't know
I
my
meant to
actors, so I
man.
wouldn't.
Yeah, and then Zac Efron. Zac Efron was one of them, and Zendaya was in there.
It's a lot of star power.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, actually seeing that, I thought that was a good movie. I guess, like, I like the musical aspect.
Like, movie wise, it's a good movie, but like, I think I actually have a question. Yeah, does it matter how we portray the circuses of the past today? So I guess that could answer that question.
Yeah, it does matter because I don't think like a lot of people know that disabled people were actually in there. I mean, like some people know, like, oh, some people have like not really diseases, but like I guess disorders maybe. But it's like they don't really know that they're considered disabled. They think they're just like people, or like
My opinion of that movie is very complicated because one could argue that it does a great job of showing the sense of solidarity, community, and more control you have over your own life and how other people perceive you within the circus when you're different. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like a completely honest representation of the situation, because it's still more than that. You know, there were still bad things that happened. You were still treated badly by the audience, because that was the whole point, was to put yourself out there and then get paid for people being disgusted by you or laughing at you, um, just for existing as you are. And the other thing too is that it positions P.G. Barnum as the hero when I wouldn't necessarily go that far. And if anything, he might be some sort of antagonist, not in a he's completely evil sense, but more just it's more complicated than that. Was a businessman with a very lively career, but a lot of his enterprises quite literally went up in flames, and he did indeed pay some of his performers quite a bit, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily treat them well or like equals, and you can make an argument that he did, but by today's standards, you could say, well, no, that doesn't count. It's just the whole thing's really complicated. And I personally dislike the fact that it glorifies the best parts of the circus without balancing it out with the other realities about it. And it creates this dishonest image and representation of the circus, which, you know, isn't character given how many circus exhibits were straight up made up and completely lies, and many of the deformities that people had were just makeup and well placed prosthesis, and it's just I- like, I guess it's in character for the movie to be inaccurate given how inaccurate entertainment within the circus was, but just besides the point. It's the whole thing is complicated, and I disliked how they simplified it into this feel good movie.
Yeah, it doesn't go into like the specifics. It just makes you feel good, I guess.
I think a sincere investigation of the circus is a good example case of how we should probably see everything as a mixture of seemingly good and seemingly bad outcomes and externalities. Because I mean, at the bottom of it, everything is like that. One of the most interesting short YouTube videos I've seen very recently is by Hank Green, who many of you will know, who tells us about his like subjective experience of looking at, for example, ships in a harbor making, transporting goods from point A to point B. You can see them as good and you can see them as bad, and it matters seemingly what perspective you choose to adopt. If you want to look at things through an environmentalist lens, you find that the ships are straight up evil, like unqualifiedly so. There is no sustainability in that process, in that industry. Simultaneously, if you take a sort of, I don't know, humanist lens, I will loosely say, it seems like a good thing because it means that more people have greater access to material well-being. I mean, this is for all the problems that we face today, kind of the best time to be alive because of things like global shipping enterprises. Likewise with the circus, and you can see pretty much everything in that light. So I'm glad to see that people are arriving at conclusions like that, because I have been grappling with that sensation of I guess almost it's duality, I suppose, for a long ass time, and it's just reassuring that someone might theoretically know what I'm talking about. But yeah, like so if you come away from having looked at the circus, having looked at anything with this weird sense of trying to judge it and being unable to arrive at a conclusion about it, and just having to imagine it complexly like that, embrace that. I say, I think that is a good way to understand things, just because it's accurate. Things are complicated in such a way that throws off our intuitive moral compasses.
I think the thing that gets me the most is that a lot of disabled people were kind of coerced into the circus because they felt like it was their best option, as opposed to, being hidden away at home or stuck in an asylum. Like, you get to travel the world, you get paid, you get regularly interacted with your coworkers, and sure, maybe you're laughed at, maybe you're called names, maybe you're dehumanized, but you know, it's up to you individually whether that's worth the benefits that you get to that compared to what you would get staying at home. And especially because at home back then was literally the worst, right? Like, you didn't have a social life, you were hidden away. It was quite literally illegal for you to be out in public if you were ugly enough. And it would be extremely difficult for you to find any sort of employment. Um, but that doesn't necessarily make the fact that you get objectified okay, you know? Um, and it's like it was an opportunity to get in a better spot, but at what cost? Both situations are bad and you're kind of screwed either way, because of the systemic and societal ableism that you face either way.
If you're hearing that as the audience and you're thinking, that kind of sounds like working in the service sector today, that like structure, right? Where it's really bad in either case. So you choose the less bad option in which you are objectified and exploited by a powerful corporation. Yeah. It's the same structural
Always
thing. It's
gotta
less bad.
inject some anti-capitalism in our meetings. Yep.
Well, kind of. We can argue that, like, and we should argue that that's like that kind of thing happens in capitalist markets by design. Of course, when you have power disparities like that in any system, you get exploitation of labor and such. You get exploitation to the effect of concentrating more power in the hands of the already powerful. But that's true of like any economic system. And and more so, I just want to make it clear, like that kind of thing is common. The objectification of labor, the coercion of labor by a system rather than necessarily an individual. These things are worth looking for in our everyday lives now because they still seem to occur. Again, less bad. I worked in a grocery store for years. It's not the freak show, but it's bad. It's bad for objectification. It's bad for exploitation.
It's the thing. It's all distinct flavors of shit. So you think it's all different at first, but at the end of the day, all of it is shit. You're eating shit. The entire thing. It doesn't matter that they taste different. They're all different types of shit, and it's up to you about which shit you're willing to eat. So it's all shit. You shouldn't have to eat shit, but that's what happens when you set up your economy like this. So I'm sorry, that was a really gross analogy. I'm not sure why I went there.
It carries the proper gravity.
Yeah, it does. It does. Everything's shit. Everything's bad.
And it kind of it feeds into this I think it was the last optional prompt here, which is not the last one we get to talk about. We still have time. But I do want to mention that because of the way that people were structurally coerced into joining the circuses, the people running these circuses, and not just Barnum, but everybody else, with all the other capital holders in the situation, have no reason to try to do and encourage anti-ableist legislation or otherwise policy, because it is that exact policy structure and the economic system and the policies that sustain it that make it possible to exploit people in the circus, to force them into it.
Both the people in the exhibits and their customers, because if you push anti-ableist legislation, if you dismantle the ugly laws, if you make it more normal to see different people out in the streets, then people have no reason to pay money to see these exhibits, because they're like, well, why would I see this? I have a neighbor who has this exact condition and we get along just fine. Why are you making shit up about my neighbor's condition? That's really rude, my dude. It destroys their business model on both sides. If they really, and that's why my answer to number 2, did these American circuses have the best interests of their performers at heart? That's why my answer to that one is no, specifically because of how we answered number 6. Because if number 2 were true, they wouldn't care about that business model they had, and they would use their popularity of these exhibits to push for anti-ableist legislation. They would push for dismantlement of ugly laws. They would push for equality. But that didn't happen.
Again, parallels with the modern day. We think of like, actually, I think it's statistically, it's analytically true that if you do things like raising minimum wages, you tend to get more economic prosperity in the medium to long term, because people who get paid more tend to spend more. right? So you get this positive feedback loop from minimum wage increases, but at the same time, you don't see corporations pushing for minimum wage increases, even though that might theoretically increase their prosperity, because if the minimum wage were higher, they would people would have less reason to capitulate to those corporations to have to maintain their jobs. They would be less afraid of losing those jobs and therefore less susceptible to further exploitation, etc. So there's always probably going to be this and this is maybe Marxist even, but there's always going to be this tension between those who hold capital and those who do not, where their interests are mutually opposed at some level or another.
I'm going to pause us here and open the floor to William and Jackie and Brian, because we've been carrying the entire conversation. We should probably stop.
But my thesis.
Well, for this, oh, go ahead, Jackson.
No, go ahead. So no, go ahead. You were.
Okay, then I'll start. So, for this thing, to be honest, I don't really know a lot about these until you talk about how the circus use disabled people to do the thing that normal people don't want to do, and I don't like it because that's how they exploit how you do something dangerous, you know how you climb a ladder to perform something, and it's just that they don't think about their life as an important person, so they just really don't care um about them, and because I think that I don't have any idea, so you guys can talk about that, and then I can get some idea.
If I'm tracking what you're talking about correctly, then yeah, there's we haven't mentioned it really, but there's safety standards that are pretty lax in the historical circus, more broadly than for the disabled community. And as far as I know, from that similar or the same is true of industry in general at the time. This was sort of the advent of large scale industry. This was and therefore before safety legislation had really been had reached its later stages like today. So yeah, and it's not like the workers can do anything about that. They just have to make do with what they're given. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of the same thing as before. There's when people are sufficiently afraid and disempowered, they're easy to exploit. And part of what that looks like is making them do dangerous crap for people's entertainment. Yeah.
It's you do it, I don't want to do it, because they're scared. I don't know, maybe. But why would we do it for them like that when they don't even respect our life?
The other thing I want to add about that is that you would think, if you were unique, then they would want to preserve your life as much as possible, but the opposite is true. If you end up dying, a lot of the times what they would do is they would take your remains and use your remains as an exhibit themselves. Like the 160-year-old advertised old lady who was only 80, he literally used her body to sell more tickets for people to see her autopsy and confirm her age.
Well,
they don't care if you lived or died. If you draw people in, dead or alive,
really bad.
They're good to go. They don't care.
Yep.
When you are a commodity, you stay a commodity.
Jackie, did you want to add something? I noticed you unmuted a while ago.
Oh, I'm gonna be honest. I don't watch a lot of things with the circus and in my style. So the only thing that I could say was I remember in like Phantom of the Opera, like he was disfigured and the way they treated him just did not sit well with me because that was like abuse.
Yeah, I think his backstory was literally being an exhibit or something. Like I think that was literally his backstory. And then he went on to be a creep because of that. Just the whole thing is really bad. But yeah, yeah, and he wasn't treated well because of his disfigurement, and he was exploited because of it, but he didn't get any of the profits for that, obviously. Which, supposedly the performers and people who did exhibits for the circus did get paid and were given profits. There were trading cards of freaks, by the way, that circulated. And apparently the people within the trading cards that were featured in the trading cards got the profit, but forgive me for being skeptical for the people who say that they got paid well or they got all the profit, because that usually isn't the case. Usually a good chunk of it gets pocketed by whoever's facilitating that enterprise. But anyway, but yeah, I like the even if you get paid, I feel like it's still exploitation because you don't have anywhere else to go, and you're making money, but you're still being exploited. Somebody's still using you to get money, and you're not getting the full cut of that profit. Like, it's the difference between, and this is why I don't really see sex work as exploitation, because you are entirely in control in terms of like if you get to do it or not and where the money goes, because this usually something you do by yourself. You don't do it usually in cooperation with a bigger entity. If it becomes a bigger entity situation, I would consider that exploitation because they tend to force you to be reliant on staying with them so that they continue to use you to make money. But if you're running it by yourself, then it's kind of hard to exploit yourself if you're the only one in charge of that. But that's not the case in the circus. It's not the case in the circus. You're still being exploited by a higher authority who doesn't see you as human, and the people you're interacting with who are paying to see you do not see you as human. And you're getting paid, but not the full amount. The money that's handed over in order to see you doesn't go directly into your hands. A cut of it goes to the overarching authority. That's exploitation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think like for disabled people they can't really like talk about rages. You just get what they get, and sucks that's like that.
Can we talk about number 4 really quick? Because I've had my mind on this, and I kind of feel like they're different, but I feel like what's known as inspiration porn is pretty much the same thing as freak shows nowadays, because it's usually circulated without your consent. It focuses on what makes you different rather than the fact that you're a human, and it's used to elicit a certain reaction from the general audience, and sometimes it's used in combination to get money of sorts, like if you have to pay to see the article or if you get money from a certain number of views. It's not the same thing, but I feel like it's an offshoot of that of some sort, or like a co-evolved, similarly evolved incident situation there, because inspiration porn is still exploitive and really dehumanizing and objectifying in a very similar manner as to the freak shows. It's an opposite type of emotion in terms of the reaction you get out of it within your audience, but the concept behind it is still the same. You're still not seen as human, and you're still seen as a form of entertainment. So
in a similar vein, reminds me of like documentaries about various people with unusual conditions, I suppose. Not always amounting to disabilities, but people with, like, I don't know, some kind of yeah, something the audience is likely not to have heard of, because this the same or very similar impulse in people, it seems to be being utilized and for the profits in that situation too, where one goes to the freak show to see something unusual. It has to then be unusual, right? It has to be something, you don't necessarily have to make up stuff, but it has to be something that people would not likely have seen, and that they would feel some way about, such that they come to the show and give you money. So yeah, I'm reminded in that same space of I mean, almost anything, honestly. Like when you have I don't know, so-called representation in like television, movies and stuff of people with various disabilities, where that's the point, that's like the headlining feature of the film or the show or whatever it is. That's not dissimilar. That's trying to play on people's want to see something different, I guess, which again requires it to be different in some usually pejorative way. So yeah, it's like we can see these freak show and freak show analogies as extensions of symptoms of a society that fails to accommodate people with disabilities. Like maybe even to the extent that that could be a gauging metric. If we want to create an anti-ableist society, we should look at the success of entertainment products that feature that, you know, exploit disability as something unusual, is what I will tentatively say for now.
got about 2 more minutes. Any more thoughts?
No, except when you guys were going on capitalism, something struck me, because like my mom's in a Facebook group that has to do with one of my sister's disabilities. So like it's like a very specific on the genome. It has to do with the lactic acid in her body, and like the way that not natural cures help. It's more like always medicine that's more harmful. So I feel like the government doesn't really care about the people. They just like, you have this. Good luck. You know?
Yeah.
And the reason I brought that up is because, like I said, the Facebook group was like, "Hey, smart water will help lower the acid in her blood because of the pH level." So my mom's trying to test that out to see if it will be active, because multiple people said so.
I feel like it would do that just because it's water, and water's a naturally neutralizing substance for pH
No,
levels.
due to her diet, we have to give her water through the G tube, but like, smart water is supposed to have a pH level that's more basic than acid. It has a higher pH basic level instead of regular water, if you read the labels and stuff. And there's actually some articles about the difference of water and how it affects the body.
Interesting. Yeah, I I'm a little skeptical of people who peddle their own treatments for things, but that's specifically because there's so much misinformation out there, and the people peddling these things are not experts in the subject at all or in medicine. And sometimes they're just saying it to get attention or make a profit, like especially if they're selling something. Um,
No, these people were in Europe. Apparently, their doctor recommended it to them.
okay. Yeah. I mean, as long as it makes sense, I guess. But
Oh yeah, they
I don't know.
like
I'm always
said, like,
wary of stuff like that because then it's like, how much of this is true and how much of it is just
no.
made up?
My mom actually looked up several research articles on why that is effective, and then she was like, still not really sure. So she asked my sister's doctors if they could try it out, and they gave her the green light. So now we're gonna wait 6 months to
Well, I'm
see if
glad
it
that
actually
she
affects for the blood.
researched it and asked her doctor because that's the correct course of action to take for any sort of medical
No,
advice
my
given
mom,
on the
my mom's
internet.
very skeptical. She was like, "Oh, I'm gonna ask the doctor. I'm gonna research it." And even then, she's like, eh. So we're gonna see if it actually does affect in 6 months with her blood work.
I hope it does work, and good on
I
your
hope so
mom
too
for
because it's supposed.
being
It's not supposed to like
diligent about
make
that.
her better. It's supposed to like help make sure that she doesn't deteriorate as faster.
Yeah. Yeah, more of a
Also,
maintenance thing.
did I tell your mom happy birthday?
Was
Okay,
it?
so I don't think that was directed at us. I think that'll do us for now. We can go on to, I think it's the last line, right? Unless this is it. Okay.
Yeah, this is it.
Again, for everybody watching, the next official meeting is April 22nd, 6:30 p.m. But don't let that stop you from continuing to discuss the circus and its comorbidities. Yeah, I guess that's it. Do we have any final thoughts besides naturally, where's the ramp?
P.T. Barnum should be glad that he's dead. Otherwise, he would have to watch out for me.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether that counts as a direct threat to violence. YouTube algorithm, let me know. Probably
I
not.
feel like Rian has a hit list of people.
I do, actually,
Yeah,
I
they
do.
do.
I have a shit list, yeah. Not a hit list, mind you, a shit list, because I don't actually want to break the law. I'm too much of a goody two shoes for that. But I do have a shit list. And if you get on my shit list, it's very, very hard to get off of it because you have to do a lot to get on it in the first place.
Right. All right. Well, that's it. I think. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time here at the Disabled
Yeah.
Non-Disabled Alliance.
Where's the
Hashtag
ramp?
Where's the ramp?
Thank you.
Where's
Bye,
the ramp?
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching.